And welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, we've been playing, I can't even get through the intro, Shin Megami Tensei III, Nocturne, Overboard, and Rise of the Slime.
Ooh.
Yeah. I assume when you say Overboard, DJ, you're referring to like the mid-'80s Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell romance farce.
No, I thought you were going to talk, there was like an old comic strip called Overboard. It is neither of those things.
No, okay. I'm like, that seems like a loose thing to base a video game on.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Yep.
Who knows what the most ridiculous licensed video game of all time has ever been. It's probably not even on the top 10.
You have multiple playable characters. You can be Goldie Hawn or Kurt Russell. Complete open world. Yeah, it's bigger than Just Cause. Fully destructible environments. I have no idea.
Yeah. No, keep going. You could sell this to somebody.
In fact, this was how Biomutant was made. This is
right. This is how it started.
This is the brainstorming that went into Biomutant. Yeah, absolutely. It started off, they were making a romantic comedy video game, and it somehow turned into a post-apocalyptic weird little monster saves the earth.
At some point, somebody was like, what if Kurt Russell was a little fox guy?
Yep, exactly that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the Duke Nukem Forever problem, where they just kept having new ideas they want to throw in there. Maybe that's how Duke Nukem started. It was going to be a Kurt Russell vehicle.
I think Duke Nukem started. Wasn't Duke Nukem like a rip on Serious Sam, or is it vice versa?
Gee, I don't know. I believe Serious Sam came after that.
Oh, okay. Which came first, the Duke or the Sam?
Yeah, I think it was, it was Duke Nukem. There was like the pre-Duke Nukem 3D Duke Nukem, which I've never even played. But... Which
is really just Doom, so...
No, I thought it was like a side-scroller. He had a pink shirt. He had, this is getting back there. That's about all I know about that game.
The pink shirt, that's all, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know. Back then, the old video games were either pink or like teal or something along those lines.
Yeah. Wow, did not know that. See? Video Game Hangover. Informative and educational.
Educational, yeah.
Yeah. We need to change our classification on iTunes.
Right. Because I get some kind of tax break if we could.
Family and educational.
Educational content.
Right, exactly. Excellent. Speaking of putting out content, we are rapidly approaching our 500th episode of this thing, DJ. That's crazy.
We don't even say the episode number every week. So just in case people are not paying attention, this is 497.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks left, depending on how you want to count it.
Yep. Phone lines are open now. If you'd like to contribute in some meaningful way to episode 500, you can leave us a message, ask a question, just say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Anything you want to do, just call 682-999-VGH1. You can also text that number, and we'll get a little text message, and we can read that on the air, but it's not nearly as fun as hearing your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. That's boring.
We would need to hear from you by June 25th for you to be included in the show. So you've got a little bit of time left, just a couple of weeks before we hit, number 500.
Yeah. Call us and just read off a list of your top 500 video games. That should be fascinating.
that would be exceptional. Yeah. It's 100 more than the 400 we did last time.
That's true. Yeah, it's weird how that works.
It's exactly how that works.
No, but seriously, we want to include everybody's messages, so please just limit it to like your top 250 or something. don't go through all 500. We don't have time for that.
Right, exactly. Cool. So, yeah, I believe that gets the show announcements out of the way.
I believe that's it.
Yeah. Any old business? Any new business?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Continuing with our retro throwback intro music, we've got Eric Cirque, one of those two things. The composer from Spelunky providing some of the intro music on the way in. This comes from a little indie game called Goonie. But one of my favorite intro little blips that we've had over the years. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And we will have a little retro outro on the way back, or on the way out, or on the way back. Who knows where you're headed?
Your choice. Yeah, exactly.
So stay tuned for that.
The retro outro.
Yeah. I regretted that as soon as I said that. I was just like,
no, I dig it. It's my favorite part of the show so far. I like it.
Oh, okay. All
right. Cool. So, video games. I played a few. I hope you did as well. Yeah.
I didn't play any games this week because it's all Shin Megami Tensei this week, as we discussed last week.
That's a lot of pressure. I don't know if I'm prepared for that.
Well, you had a whole week, so I don't know what your excuse is.
Let me talk about Rise of the Slime first, because I didn't actually play the whole game. I played the demo, so a tiny bit of a cop-out, but wanted to recommend this to anyone who is a fan of Slay the Spire, which I know DJ and I obsessed over to some degree or another when it first came out for the Switch about a year and a half ago, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. For those who have not played it, both games are sort of collectible card games, deck building games, essentially, where you get sort of the representation of playing cards across the bottom of your screen, and you get to select kind of which cards you use to do attacks, to defend yourself, to cast magic spells, etc., etc. There are conditional cards too that will impact, what kind of cards you draw, how often you get to draw them, whether or not cards get sort of discarded or go back into your draw pile, things like that. So you're always trying to, whittle it down to the most effective deck. Both games have a really just kind of obsession-worthy kind of push-pull between, give me more cards. But then obviously you sort of impact your ability to get those cards to come up if your deck is bigger and bigger and bigger. So there is a lesson there in running lean, making sure that your cards are few but effective, so that they cycle through your hand more and more often. So yeah, there's a lot of I don't know, sort of weighing of options that goes into a game like this. And I don't know, I find the whole structure of that super compelling when it's done well. Slay the Spire did it very well. Rise of the Slime does it pretty well. I find that when I play Rise of the Slime, it just makes me want to play Slay the Spire. I'm not sure if that's what they were going for, but you could definitely sort of see the influence.
How is it, what's the big, signature difference, or what's going on in Rise of the Slime?
Presentation more than anything. I think they're going for something a little more cartoony. It definitely has a pretty unique sort of assembly in that the whole thing is sort of presented as a stage play, essentially. So you've got kind of curtains on the left and right of the screen. Excuse me. All of your characters are little puppets, essentially. They're your main character is a slime, and he's on a little popsicle stick, and he sort of walks onto the screen, and it's a little popsicle stick at the bottom, sort of as his base kind of moving, and all the monsters sort of move into the screen from the right hand side, and they're on popsicle sticks as well. So as you vanquish monsters, they disappear, and it's just a little smoking popsicle stick left over.
So they don't actually animate; they're just little paper cutouts or whatever on sticks.
There is some animation to it, but the overall gist of it, I think, is sort of presenting it as kind of a puppet show, sort of out of construction paper characters.
Oh, yeah, that's clever.
It's super clever.
One of the interesting things about Slay the Spire's presentation was that, first of all, you had all this incredible card art for this massive deck of cards.
Right.
But then there would be, a scene of things playing out above the cards, because you had your character making their way up the spire and fighting all these enemies. And I felt like, it wasn't the most animation or graphics rich experience.
Yeah.
But they would still, put in a good amount of effort to move around and animate these characters. But I just like that that Rise of the Slime has said like, oh, we're just going to do a little stage play and buy themselves an excuse to just keep everything very keep the animation budget very low.
Right. It's a looker though. I think, Slay the Spire is not the prettiest game. It certainly has really creative character design, but they don't do a lot with it. There isn't, like you said, there's not a ton of animation that goes into it.
I'm not trying to say that as a slight to the game. I think it's
no, not at all. I think it's
very good art. And I think it's just, if you get into making a collectible card game, I think the card art should be a big focus of what you're doing. But then because it's a video game, everybody expects just these incredibly dramatic battles to be playing out. And that may not necessarily be... I mean, if you asked me to draw a bunch of card art for a game, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. I don't know if that necessarily translates to being able to animate a bunch of a huge cast of creatures for the rest of the game. So I think it's a very innovative way to work around that.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Rise of the Slime also does some sort of I don't know, a sort of progression and attack kind of differences in that it also has a bit of a turn-based grid to it where certain attacks can't be used unless you're up close or actually behind your enemy. So you use certain cards to be able to move forward kind of 2 blocks or move 3 blocks to sort of get behind somebody, and then you could use kind of a backstab attack, and it goes for double damage if you can get behind an enemy. So there's a little bit of kind of Fire Emblem in that you're trying to sort of make sure you have kind of optimum placement for your hero, for the slime, to make sure that he is, outside of striking distance of the enemies, but within a range that you can sort of volley attacks at them and hopefully sort of sneak behind them and go for double damage. So you're also trying to, other than sort of building the optimum deck to be successful at this thing, you're also trying to make sure you have kind of optimum placement and can defend yourself appropriately if you happen to get in too close to some of their attacks. So again, you're sort of managing a few more, even more than Slay the Spire, a few more kind of obsession-worthy kind of details to this game. So I like it. It definitely feels very sort of heavily inspired by Slay the Spire, but that's a great game, and that's a great thing to be inspired by. And I think Rise of the Slime does some really kind of unique and creative things with the structure of that to kind of make it its own. So if you can't tell, I'm into it. I want to get the whole game. Just kind of have a lot going on from a gaming perspective right now.
Is this out already?
It is out already, yeah. It's out for just about everything, I think. It's on Switch, PS4, I think PS5. I know it's on Xbox as well. Can't speak for Steam, but yeah, it's out there on stuff. So wow. If any of this sounds interesting to you, or if you have completely beaten the snot out of Slay the Spire and are looking for a new obsession, I would encourage you to check out Rise of the Slime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Again, free demo on the Switch at the very least. I can vouch for that, so check that out. It is a worthy download. You can kind of get through a good round of the game in a half hour, 45 minutes or so, and decide for yourself whether or not this is your thing.
Sounds cool. Yeah, maybe we'll check it out.
Definitely.
I'm not exactly I still had a lot of stuff to do in Slay the Spire, so I'm not burned out on it or anything. Yeah. But I can see what other people are doing.
I come at it from that perspective too. And I'm like, geez, that Slay the Spire is just a game that keeps on giving. I mean, they even added an additional character to it in the past year. It started with 3, now there's 4, so there's a whole other additional character for you to, obsess over and try to maximize the return on. But I'm certainly not done with the things I can do in Slay the Spire. But it's just cool that this is that game is now sort of begetting things that it's influencing.
Yeah. I'm going to hold out for the officially licensed, Dragon Quest spin-off Slay the Spire. None of these off-brand slimes, collectible card games.
Yeah. Because I wonder how territorial they are with the slime design. If anybody else puts a slime in their video game, do you have to be very careful that it doesn't peak in a very specific way? Does it have to be a particular color scheme?
I wonder. I wonder how they draw the line, because I feel like the Dragon Quest slime is like how can you trademark just a generic slime? That has to be an idea that predates Dragon Quest. Like, and there are just so many games that already have very similar looking slime characters. But I wonder, yeah, if it's like, well, you can't have the eyes look a certain way. If it gets a little too pointed at the top, then you're going to get into trouble with Square Enix's lawyers. But,
yes, yeah. They start getting litigious.
yeah. I'd love to see just like every starting slime enemy from every game all lined up on a spectrum of like from the least Dragon Quest like to just being a knockoff of the Dragon Quest slime and just seeing where games stack up.
The definitive sort of collection of all video game slimes.
Yes. Yeah. The slime continuum.
Can find out who Patient Zero was, who started this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question. I wonder who just had the first generic, like, oh, you're level 1 and you have to fight a slime now.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, like, as a kid, I remember the concept of slime, of being slimed. I'm certainly Slimer from Ghostbusters.
Sure.
Yeah. And was the Nickelodeon thing where if you said, I don't know, you get slimed, and they would dump a bucket of green goo on your head.
Yeah.
You can't do that on television. That was that show. So, yeah, I don't know at what point sort of being slimed became like a thing, a slime. So maybe Dragon Quest. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I remember like Legend of Zelda had a few kind of slime blob enemies with like 2 little eyes on them. But
yeah, Legend of Zelda has the little. What are they? The little round ones that are like different elementals, right? They're electrified and stuff like that.
They eventually evolved into those things. But I feel like it. I mean, I want to say it probably came from like Dungeons and Dragons or some old like Western fantasy thing. But who knows? I am very curious about this now. Let's take a break and go get to the bottom of this.
Let's hit pause and come back to this next week.
Okay. Episode 500, top 500 slimes through all video game and role-playing mythology.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yes. I don't know if there have been that many slimes even.
So all of this comes back to Rise of the Slime.
Yeah, right.
Very fun little video game. Would recommend.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was just kidding. I did play a video game this week. I played Overboard. Should I talk about this now? And then you can just have the floor for Shin Megami Tensei for the rest of the show? Or
I feel like you're setting maybe unrealistic expectations for things I have to say about Shin Megami Tensei. There's only so many hours of the day. I've played a goodly amount of it. But yeah, I'm prepared to talk about Shin Megami Tensei after you talk about Overboard, DJ.
Okay. I'm just trying to, adjust my expectations because everybody knows this is a game. It's about 5,000 hours long.
Yeah.
So I assume that
I've played 0.01% of it.
0.01%, which is I don't know. It's a long time.
5 minutes, 5 hours, somewhere in that. Yeah.
Somewhere between 5 minutes and 5 hours. Okay.
No, it's definitely. I think I'm more than 5 hours in. I forget the magic number. I think I'm somewhere around 6 or 7.
Okay.
But we'll come back to this. You have a game you want to talk about.
Okay. So I played this game called Overboard with an exclamation point for some silly reason. This is the new game from Inkle, who made many years ago this game called 80 Days, which I want to say ended up being my game of the year that year. It was a mobile game, which was a shock. But it was basically kind of a just narrative adventure where you were... God, what's the guy's name in that story? Phileas Fogg.
Oh.
Who... In what?
I said Jules Verne. It was not Around the World in 80 Days.
No, wait. No, he wrote that, right?
I believe so, yes.
But
he's
the
not
guy,
in it.
Yeah, no, he was not a self-insert. Or I don't know, maybe he had a cameo at some point. But, you had to travel around the world by whatever means. And I thought it was just a riveting, even though it was just a lot of text and dialogue on my phone. It was just a terrific, just incredibly unique thing. And now they've made a new thing. The hook this time around is a reverse murder mystery. So it's still very narrative based. The premise is you play as a half of this kind of well-to-do English couple who is traveling to America on a boat. I believe like in the 1930s or so. And at the very beginning of the game, this is not a spoiler because this is the entire premise of the game, you murder your husband by throwing him off the boat.
Ah.
And the reason why it's a reverse murder mystery is like clearly you have committed the murder. You are the murderer in the story. You spend the rest of the game as the boat completes its journey to America, just sort of like dealing with the aftermath of that. Whether that means like covering up your tracks or keeping up appearances by going around about the day as if nothing had happened and conversing with everybody else on the boat, with the goal of trying to get off the boat sort of like without arousing suspicion and people realizing that you have murdered somebody.
Oh, wow. It's like a perfect crime simulator.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
But because this is so, I mean, it's such a like kind of choose your own adventure thing, you could just not do any of that if you don't feel like it. There are so many options because this game just throws tons of dialogue options at you where you could just like be like, I can't take it anymore. I killed my husband, and just like blurt that out in a public place. And then I assume the game ends. I haven't sort of tried that route yet.
Oh, really?
But I think it's hilarious that it frequently pops up as an option. Like, well, I'll just be having a conversation with somebody and trying to like manipulate them or avoid coming under their gaze or arousing their suspicion. But then there will just be an option that's like, oh, yeah, I killed my husband, by the way. He's not going to be joining us for breakfast today. So it's interesting. It actually reminds me quite a bit of just when you get selected to be the imposter in Among Us. Or if you are one of the fascists in Secret Hitler, the board game. I'm not sure if you played that one. Yeah. But starting this game was very rough because in both of those scenarios, I really don't like being the one who is supposed to be going around like stabbing somebody in the back and then having to lie about it. Because I feel like I just don't have a game plan for that situation. So in this game, it starts up, you've murdered your husband the previous night, and the game proper actually begins the next morning in your cabin. And you're just like, oh yeah, I killed my husband. And then it just opens it up to like, well, what do you want to do now? And I go, I don't know. Did anybody like see me kill my husband? Is there any evidence left behind? And these sort of things are things you have to find the answers for as you like make your way out of your cabin and start trying to carry on like nothing has really happened.
So I don't know if you can sort of speak to this if you've gotten to that point, but is being detected like an instant fail, or do you then have to sort of deal with the consequences of that?
Well, except for the situations where you just, immediately confess somewhere. Basically how the game plays out is you have a few hours on the boat. It's not real time. It's all sort of accelerated. Where you go around and talk to people and you explore the different rooms on the ship. But eventually one of the characters will come and say, hey, we're going to have kind of an emergency meeting in the cafeteria, as it were. And then you discuss like, oh man, this passenger is missing and we think he's been murdered. And at that point it turns into like a little interrogation. Be like, so what did everybody see, and that sort of stuff. So at that point all the decisions you've made and the actions you've taken throughout the day kind of get called into question. Somebody will say like, well, I didn't see Mr. So-and-so since last night, or Mrs. So-and-so was talking about him this morning and that's weird if he hasn't been around since last night. But the way you end up going around the boat is, it reminds me a bit of that crocodile game, or was it an alligator game? I can't remember, that you played a couple months ago, where you were going around and like completing tasks, essentially. Yes, and sort of interviewing. What was it? What was that game called? Yeah, and I had to interview suspects and try to sort of like do tasks to get them to give me information. Yeah. And this is sort of how 80 Days worked as well, but basically anything you do in the game takes a small amount of time, whether it's just looking around your cabin, trying to find evidence and decide which of it you should throw overboard, or moving to different rooms on the ship and engaging in conversation. it all eats into the amount of time left on the boat trip and leading up to the time where they call the emergency meeting. So there's really like a finite amount of things you can accomplish during a playthrough. And that is, it's a little harrowing the first time you play through it. Because you realize, like, the first time I played through it, I thought, well, I've got like 8 hours on this boat to do whatever. I don't know what sort of things I need to get up to. But by the time I was reaching the end, I realized there was this pressure of the meeting coming up. I was like, oh man, I actually have less time than I thought to accomplish whatever I was trying to do. So you do have to be a little like deliberate in how deep you get into a conversation, or maybe how thoroughly you go through some of the rooms on the ship.
Because you're eventually trying to be quick, because the clock is ticking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I remember in that game, incidentally, that I was playing was called Later Alligator.
That's right.
Yeah, and similarly, the clock ran much too fast. I remember the conceit of that was like, let's meet up again at 3 p.m. and share information. And I'm like, oh man, I have tons of time, because it was, you start the game at 9 a.m. or whatever. But yeah, it's video game time, so it just moves much too quick, and you don't really have the ability to interview everybody in one shot. So you're trying to make the best choice you can, the best decision you can, based on only part of the information, only some of the information available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It sounds like obviously you sort of have a similar approach to Overboard, in that you can't quite do everything you want to create a scenario where you get away with murder.
Yeah. Yeah, it was surprisingly similar, actually. Considering I hadn't even played that game, I was just like, oh man, this is exactly like the alligator game. It's weird.
Yeah.
So it ends up turning into a little bit of kind of a Groundhog Day situation, because each playthrough is fairly brisk. Like, you'll get to the end and have that meeting, and the first time I played it, I had no idea what I was doing. So people were just like, well, obviously you were seen on the deck throwing your husband over the rail, so we're going to arrest you and throw you in jail. But then you get a little sort of epilogue thing that says, well, if only I had done this thing, or if only I had looked into this other sort of thing going on the boat, because there's a lot of just weird shenanigans happening, and there are a lot of characters you can interact with. They all seem to have their own little mysteries about them. So then it throws you back to the start, and then you just start again with a little more knowledge of what's happening on the boat. So the next time you can just be like, oh, well, I know I have to go talk to this person. Maybe I have time this time to go check out one of the other rooms and see if there is any evidence there that would help me. And then it just repeats over and over from there. And each time you get a little more proficient at avoiding suspicion and maybe accomplishing sort of your grand plan, which I'm not going to reveal, but eventually it becomes clear that you have sort of goals that you want to accomplish on the ship as part of this murder.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. I suspect you probably can't talk about it here, but I was wondering why you threw your husband overboard.
Yeah, well, you have some, incentives, but
Gotcha.
I'm not going to give it away.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah, so it's a fun little thing to just loop through a few times. It's not... 80 Days was kind of the same way in that, the goal was to get around the world in under 80 days, and presumably under budget, I believe, and with all of your limbs still attached and that sort of stuff. I remember the playthroughs in that feeling fairly long, but in this one it's very quick. Like, I was able to do like 3 or 4 or 5 in just a few hours, which is nice because it feels like, since it's a much faster pace, it's easier to kind of explore different branches through the game as you go along. And it does the nice visual novel thing when you're in these conversation trees, where it will highlight, I think, the most recent choice, or the choice you picked on the previous playthrough. So, like, if that one worked out for you and you want to do that again, it's easy to pick that up. Or if you want to avoid it, you can easily pick the other choice and see some more dialogue options. Because a lot of the time, it feels like 80 Days in that, sometimes you'll just be in a conversation and many of the options that you can pick are interesting and have potentially interesting ramifications. But unlike like Mass Effect or something, you can't just go through all of them systematically. You have to actually pick one, and then the conversation will go down this new direction based on that, and you don't really get to explore the other options until future playthroughs. So that was very cool, I thought. That worked out very well in 80 days.
And are the scenarios consistent so that sort of information you collect in one playthrough is still relevant in following playthroughs?
It doesn't really feel like the characters know about it. It's mostly in your head. The main character might be a little self-aware that things are going on. Actually, I don't know if that's true. The only thing I can think of is there's like a little chapel on the boat. So you can head down there and actually like talk to God very briefly. And the conversations there are hysterical because it's just like, starts out our Father who art in heaven or whatever. And then it turns out God is just like, what do you need help with this time? I know what you did. Why are you even talking to me in the first place? So you could end up asking him for advice or to be forgiven, and he just feels very just irritated that he has to put up with you.
That's funny.
He seems to remember everything that happened in the previous playthroughs, which, I would think he would.
Sure. Oh, that's an interesting approach. You sort of create, an omnipotent character that has sort of visibility of all of your attempts to get away with murder, and the scenario happens to be God.
Yeah. And I keep forgetting that the chapel is actually down there because I've just been so obsessed with figuring out what's going on with all the other characters that I forget that sometimes you can just sneak away and have a conversation with a higher power. It's just a weird random thing that happens in this game.
Oh, that's great. So is this a mobile game?
It's mobile. It's I believe it's on Switch and a few other platforms.
Cool.
And Steam as well.
I know 80 Days came to the Switch as well, so it's
yeah,
makes sense that ultimately this would get there too. But it sounds like a fun little lark.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I eventually was able to escape off the ship scot-free. Although there were still even though I was that's kind of mission accomplished. There was still more to do. I could have had a more perfect getaway. And it feels like there's still mysteries to uncover, so I'll probably keep on going back to it a little bit until I know what's up with some of the other characters. But that was a nice surprise. I had kind of forgotten that this team is out there making stuff. I did not play their previous game, which was something about deciphering ancient languages or something, which also sounds very interesting. But I just wasn't able to squeeze it in for whatever reason. But this one was very cool. It felt very much sort of in the vein of 80 Days, where it's a lot of dialogue trees and choose your own adventure style. But it's not quite the same model.
Yeah.
Plus, just a weird experience. Just I've never really been outside of Among Us in a situation where you are the criminal or the murderer who is under suspicion. So that was very unique as well.
Yeah. I like sort of all of these, and I think Among Us sort of gets credit for being the most visible, but the kind of sort of the rise of the social deduction game that obviously existed, that predates Among Us, but I think sort of that conceit of one of you is working against the team, and the team has to sort of suss that out, and the the killer, as it were, or whatever, is trying to sort of get away with it. That sort of asynchronous set of goals, I think, is kind of fun and a pretty unique approach to video games, or card games, or role-playing games, or whatever. So yeah, I think I dig that. I like that that's out there, that this is sort of more of a thing in gaming right now.
Yeah.
Some genuine mystery in games.
There's that other game on the Switch. I believe it's called Gnosia or something. Have you heard of that one?
What is it called?
It's Gnosia.
No, I don't think I've heard of that.
I heard it described as werewolf in kind of I think it sounds like a sci-fi setting.
Yeah, Werewolf and Secret Hitler are the two I sort of go back to in terms of real world games, playing, at PAX, especially, sitting at a table with a bunch of people trying to figure out who the werewolf is or who the fascists are.
Right.
I think that's really neat. But yeah, from a video game perspective, I can only, there's one called Hidden Agenda that I remember reading about. That was a similar thing. There's a bunch of people at a party and you're trying to figure out sort of who the bad guy is, but I've not heard of the one you're mentioning.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what the structure is because I haven't played it yet. But I believe there's like a narrative component. So there are just like other characters in the game that you interact with. And then this one of them is the werewolf or whatever in this case. Seems like an interesting twist on the format because it's not purely like, a social game that you all sit around playing. It's been designed to some degree.
Yeah. It certainly doesn't sound like Overboard is a social deduction game. I mean, in the sense that, like, in Among Us, there are other people, other human beings, sort of, playing the crew that is becoming suspicious of you.
Right.
Yeah. But there definitely is an element of deduction happening there that you're trying to evade.
Yeah, it's sort of like, you eventually, over repeated playthroughs of this thing, understand sort of the narrative you have to create to, keep yourself an alibi and maybe cast suspicion on somebody else.
Oh, neat.
So, I don't know if there's like one perfect solution to get through it or multiple, but that's sort of exciting as well. It just feels like there are a bunch of different paths you can take to a successful getaway.
Yeah, you're kind of scripting it as you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was a lot of fun. It's called Overboard. Just a few dollars on iOS. I believe it's kind of console prices on consoles and PC. But it's cool that it's on a bunch of stuff. People can play it wherever.
Got to pay that Switch tax.
Got to do it.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like my kind of thing. I might have to check this out.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I've had 80 days. I have 80 days on my phone. I've had it on my... I currently have it on my Switch Lite, under the impression that I will play it someday. I just have not gotten past the first couple of screens of it. It just feels like an undertaking. It feels like a lot of reading.
Oh, no, it's great. I mean, that was something that really surprised me about it, is that just how kind of like how much it sucks you in and just how kind of manic the pace is. Because it's always just like, oh man, we gotta go. We gotta go to this city. We gotta check into the hotel. Oh, we gotta get up in the morning to go on to the next city because the train's leaving and there's not gonna be another train for a week. So don't want to miss out on that. But it just feels like you are so pushed into moving as quickly as possible.
Oh, jeez. Maybe I didn't get to that point. Maybe I checked out too early. Because that certainly was not the impression I got. I got of that experience. So that sounds like a fun game. Sounds like I would want to play that game.
Yeah, it's good. It really made me want to travel, which was kind of funny. Because you just end up going to so many different like ports around the world, of course, since you're just traveling around the entire globe.
Yeah. Neat.
Overboard did not make me want to get on a cruise and murder somebody, incidentally. So I guess that's one difference between the two.
Did it make you want to watch Kurt Russell movies?
No, I think that part must have
China?
been lost in the development at some point.
Yeah. Cool. That's a good find.
Yeah. All right, so drum roll.
Shin Megami Tensei III, Nocturne, HD Remaster.
Oof.
It's a mouthful. So this is, as stated, an HD remaster of a 2003 PlayStation 2 game. Shin Megami Tensei is the series that has sort of spawned, but has spawned Persona, the Persona games.
Yeah.
And they share a lot of very similar structural conceits in that inevitably you are a character that is trying to collect monsters or demons, or is fighting monsters or demons. A little bit of Pokemon, yeah. And you kind of like cross-pollinate them. You have the ability sometimes to sort of remove abilities from certain demons and apply them to other demons. You're kind of trying to sort of build a team of monsters that you can kind of summon and command that are kind of a bouillabaisse of the enemies that you've collected and wooed to joining your team. There is a bit of a choose your own adventure kind of element to having dialogues with some of these critters that are trying to attack you or that you sort of find during your experiences. You have to sort of say the right things. You have to bribe them the right ways to join your team. Otherwise a battle ensues.
That wasn't really a component in Persona, right? You more or less just found these things and they joined your party.
Yeah, I think that the Persona hook is that your party was sort of populated by your friends. It was, you were a high school kid and you had a bunch of high school friends who had cool abilities, who had alternate personas, and what you were fighting ultimately in the Persona games are more or less all of the demons from Shin Megami Tensei. So the games.
So these are your party members in the actual Shin Megami Tensei games.
Correct. Yeah. Not all of them, but more often than not, in the ones that I've played anyways, which now is 3, 4, and sort of the sequel to 4. So I'm not not an expert in all things Shin Megami Tensei, but in those 3 games, the demon catalog, the monster catalog, what do they call it? The bestiary, is essentially all of the characters that are your party members in Shin Megami Tensei are the enemies in the Persona games.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you're just like one guy. You're the Pokemon trainer, and you're throwing like Pokeballs out, and these things pop out of them.
Yeah. So in the hook in Shin Megami Tensei 3, Nocturne HD Remaster is that you are you are a high school kid again, who goes out one day to sort of go to a hospital to visit a teacher who has, I forget what happened to them, but something happened to them and they're in the hospital. And while you're sort of on the way to the hospital, weird things are happening all over Japan. People are behaving strangely. People on the street are saying unusual things to you. There is sort of a subplot about 2 cults in Japan that are sort of fighting each other. And one of them is trying to sort of bring on the apocalypse. And while you're in the hospital, it happens. The world ends, of course. And sort of the depiction of the world ending in this is at the very least there is a dome now over your area in Japan, and there are just wild demons running the streets everywhere. So it's a very dangerous place to be a human being. But as luck would have it, you have been blessed / cursed with being the I think they call you the demi-fiend. You are a half-human, half-demon hybrid. So you have the ability to sort of look and relate and interact with the world as a human, but you also have demonic abilities. You will see the word demon about 6,000 times in every conversation you have in Shin Megami Tensei 3. People like talking about demons a lot. Your high school friend calls you at the beginning of the game and says, "Hey, we're going to the hospital to see our teacher. Make sure you wear that shirt that has the demon print on it." And I'm like, wow, who has the shirt with the demon print on it?
Well, what are you talking about? Like some sort of sigil that wards away demons, or you've got like a retro demon shirt, or?
I don't know. You don't get to pick it out of your closet, so I'm not entirely certain what your friend is talking about. But yeah, demons are very much a thing in this version of Japan.
It's like, we're gonna go see your teacher in the hospital. Wear that terrifying shirt.
Yes. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. And so you get trapped in the hospital. The opening scenes, the first 2 or 3 hours of this thing is you trying to sort of get out of the hospital, fighting your way down the halls and corridors, sort of against demons and monsters, occasionally luring some of them to join your team, because there is a great big baddie guarding the door on the way out, and you can't take them on your own, so you have to sort of explore the hospital grounds, find key cards, get into different rooms, sort of standard kind of explorational things, while also trying to build up your resources and team a little bit to be able to get out. Meanwhile, there are also a series of weird little characters that kind of pop up and say cryptic things and drop little hints about sort of what's going to happen and what's going to transpire for the next 50 hours or so of this video game. A lot of it feels like kind of mumbo jumbo and doesn't really make a lot of sense, at least at this point in the game. Who knows if it will all come together in some elegant way in 45 more hours, but yeah, it is a very chatty game. It definitely, you will have very long-winded conversations with a lot of characters that will sort of say kind of non sequiturs and unusual things that don't necessarily sort of seem useful or helpful or relevant right away.
I don't really know what the trajectory was for this series, but 2003 seems like about the time it stopped becoming important that your JRPG plot made any sense at the end. It just feels like you play.
Did they make sense up
now.
To that point? Is that what you're implying? Or
I mean, a lot of them, they had like a coherent plot that concluded, and for most of it, or at least like the first 90%, you were on board with it. But now I just feel like, you got like Kingdom Hearts, got the Final Fantasy VII remake, like all bets are off. Just like, we don't need an ending. Just put some words in there.
Yeah. I don't know if
some
Shin Megami
demons
Tensei
fly out of the sky. That's enough.
has an ending. I just want it to have a point. I think that's the thing I'm sort of frustrated about right now, is it feels like a lot of kind of aimless wandering. A lot of like, what do you want me to do now? It does this thing where it sort of dumps you back to kind of a 3D map of a post-apocalyptic map of Japan,
of the
with
dome.
parts of it are sort of like washed out, parts of it covered in sand and inaccessible. And rather than sort of it being kind of a 3D depiction of your character kind of running down the streets, it is just a little pointer, just a little like map pointer icon. And you sort of slide it across the screen, like up and down alleys and streets and down highways and stuff like that. And then occasionally something will light up and indicate to you that you can visit that thing. And then you push the button and it goes into enter mode and you walk into that building. And now it's a 3D depiction of your character and he's walking around sort of hallways and corridors and stuff like that. So it's...
That's very economical of them.
Right. Probably a conceit to the era that this game was built in. But it just feels like a missed opportunity to put some, fun and exciting and interesting kind of exploration into a post-apocalyptic RPG.
Oh, I see. So you want to be playing Disaster Report or whatever those games are?
Maybe. I'm not sure what that game is, but yeah. I don't know.
I mean, that's the way Persona worked, isn't it? Or at least Persona 3, because you had you had the dungeons and then some interior areas, but when you got kicked all the way back out to the world map, you were just on, like a map. And you're just a little icon moving around.
It wasn't really until, I think, Persona 4 that you were actually kind of walking around pretty robust areas of a city. Interesting you mentioned that. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That is in the earlier Persona games.
It's funny because I think like Persona 3 Portable even got rid of like the interiors and they were all menu driven. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, that's lame because I like walking around these areas. But after playing that game for 30 hours or so, I thought, well, what if they didn't have to do that? That would be much faster.
Yeah. Maybe I will sort of welcome the efficiency of that later, but now it just feels... I don't know, it feels a little sort of aimless. It feels like I'm just sort of moving the little icon around the map, hoping something lights up, which means I can sort of explore it and maybe fight new monsters and stuff.
Oh, so you're just saying it's like unintuitive to actually navigate.
Yeah. I mean, it also feels a little cheap, but...
a little bland. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah,
I mean, I like
a
good world map, but there's something to be said about, time efficiency as well.
Sure, absolutely, particularly in a game that's going to go on for quite a time.
Yeah. Maybe they had an amazing world map in like Shin Megami Tensei II, and now they just decided, now we're just going to do this quick, icons thing.
I don't know. I've not played that one, so I can't speak to that, but I'm not sure. The thing that the game also does that I find endlessly frustrating, and this will come as no surprise to you, DJ, is that it has random encounters.
What a shock.
Yep. So, again, sort of being an affectation of a video game that came out in 2003, you will be sort of, moving your little icon around the map, or you'll be in sort of the 3D depiction of your character trying to run around hospitals and other buildings up and down the hallway with an objective in mind. Oh, geez, I have to get down the hall and get through that door and go to the other side because there is a thing there in that room that I have to do. And along the way, without any warning, really, you have a little meter in the bottom right-hand corner that makes no sense to me. It lights up red when you're about to sort of be attacked, but there's no ability to, like, evade it or anything. So I'm like, why is there even a meter? So yeah, you will be like, oh, cool, the door is just right there. I'm going to push the button on the door. I'm going to walk through the door. But no. Screen goes back, black, wavy lines come in, 5 monsters line up, and they want to kick your ass. And you have to sort of deal with them. And unfortunately, at the early hours of the hospital, they're not rolling out like their best monsters to fight you. It's the same kind of 3 boring ones over and over and over again, and you're kind of power leveling, just wiping the room with them. So yeah, it doesn't feel fun when that happens. It doesn't feel like, oh great, I get to fight the same three stupid monsters over and over again, without any warning, without any sort of like, visual indication of them coming towards you on the map. Just a little sort of meter in the right-hand corner of the screen that makes no sense to me in any other way. So yeah, it feels a little bit like kind of an artifact of a forgotten age when that happens, and it makes me angry when it does. I don't know. I know that was a thing. I know that was very much a thing that was in RPGs for a very long time, but I just can't stand it.
Oh man, yeah, that is something you risk when you go back and play a game from that long ago.
Yeah,
man, I feel like even then, people complained about random encounters, and other games were like had different approaches to it that were better than just the straight up Dragon Quest, like, oh, occasionally you walk too far and you have to do a battle.
Yeah,
I really miss, for instance, I forget what I played recently, maybe I'm just imagining this, but I really wish, let me just talk about how Earthbound did it, is you'd have, they wouldn't be random encounters, you would see monsters on the map, so I guess already that is completely not the Shin Megami Tensei model.
Right.
But eventually, you would overlevel these things. Oh, I remember what it is. I'm thinking of Yakuza Like a Dragon, which again was also not really random, but you would have groups roaming around.
Yeah.
Like, it all averages out to be effectively like random encounters, right? Because sometimes you just can't avoid them.
Yeah. Yakuza became especially frustrating. You would sort of see a group coming towards you down a street, so you would take a detour down an alley directly into another group that you couldn't have possibly known was there or avoided. So yeah, they either did a very good or a very bad job of just absolutely filling the streets full of people who wanted to attack you in Yakuza.
Mm-hmm. But your comment about having to fight these same groups over and over again made me think of the thing that Earthbound did, which was that eventually once you got leveled up enough that, the battles were trivial, it would just stop making you fight them. Like, a monster could even run up to you and, like, initiate a battle, but sometimes if you were strong enough, it would just end immediately without even going to the battle screen.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, kind of wish they did that in Yakuza. Kind of wish they would do that in other games where...
Yeah.
Battles are just a formality after a certain point, after you're strong enough.
That's so smart.
Yeah, no, it's really good. So smart. But yeah, it sounds like they did not actually make a lot of gameplay adjustments or like quality of life changes since 2003.
No. I'm actually reading sort of on Reddit that they've tweaked hit points quite a bit. That the enemies in the HD remaster have higher hit point counts than they did in the original release of the game in 2003. So not only are there random encounters, but those enemies are harder to beat
why
in 2021. I don't know what the motivation for that is. It's staggering that that's the case, but yeah.
Huh. That's
so
weird.
Yeah.
I feel like, other games when they come out now, they just add easy mode, not hard mode.
Yeah, there is an easy mode in this, and I'm wondering if anyone's done the research on whether or not playing it on easy mode just rolls it back to the 2003 level of difficulty. It also has a hard mode, so I'm just playing it on kind of normal. It told me in the beginning that you can adjust this at any time.
Oh, that's good.
So I like when a game tells me that. I'm a big fan of knowing that information up front. So I've just sort of started playing it kind of on, I'm making air quotes here, normal, to see kind of what the level of difficulty and annoyance is with some of these encounters. So I've not seen any reason yet. And I've had a couple of kind of, big time boss battles, kind of nail biters. I died a few times, but nothing that feels so abusive that I need to entertain kind of turning down the difficulty yet.
I don't know. You got a long road ahead of you.
There is,
the whole thing on normal.
Quite a few hours left. I'm not sort of eliminating that as a possibility. I'm open to that, obviously. I'm not above it, but haven't needed to do that in the first bunch of hours of this thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's kind of refreshing to struggle against a few bosses early on. I kind of expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. That first one, just trying to get out of the hospital, the guy guarding the door, essentially, from me being able to explore the rest of Japan, took a couple of attempts. I had to go back and grind a little bit and explore a little bit more, which was useful because I found corners of the hospital that I hadn't previously found, and picked up a cool, fun, extra little things and a few other encounters, people I could bring on my team, demons I could kind of cross-pollinate with each other and stuff like that. So definitely there was value in the further exploration. But I feel like, though, I like the exploration in these games. I like being able to sort of wander around Japan and check things out. I like having an objective. I like sort of knowing, okay, I need to get, like I said, across the map to this place and do this thing. But those random encounters, man, just make me want to not explore. They make me want to sort of stay in a place where I know there's no monsters that are going to randomly encounter me. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is. The modern solution is just sort of have a visual depiction of them, and you sort of like give them a berth and try to walk around them in the map. Or in Dragon Quest XI, you just get on your horse and barrel through them. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how they would have retroed Shin Megami Tensei III to make that more tolerable. But yeah, it definitely feels like a leftover artifact as I'm playing through this thing.
Yeah, weird. Do you know if they made any other sort of adjustments for this remastered version?
Nothing else that I've read. I did some research early on about kind of character build out, because there's a couple of different paths you can go with your demi-fiend character in terms of making them kind of more of a primarily magic user or primarily more physical, like just punching demons in the face kind of character, and what kind of the push-pull and the give-take and the perks and benefits of going in either of those directions are. A lot of the guides that I used were written based on the 2003 version. And Reddit seems to say that most of that stuff, 99% of the stuff contained in those guides, is still applicable to the 2021 version of it. So it feels otherwise sort of relatively untouched in that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Unmessed with.
Do you know why people were so excited for this one? Because it seemed like when they announced it, people like went nuts. They're like, oh man, Shin Megami Tensei 3. Did this come out in the US before, or is there something special about it?
I don't think so. I think it's just game preservation. I think in a lot of ways it's just a game that has not been accessible, and unless you do mods, or mods is not the right word. What's the thing I'm talking about? ROMs.
ROMs, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and want to play kind of pirated old video games on your PCs or whatever. But if you want to, a legitimately released, relatively unmessed with version of Shin Megami Tensei 3 in 2021, there were not a lot of ways to access that. And I think sort of the modern Shin Megami Tensei games, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is supposed to come out this year, and they've teased that a bit. And sort of by nature of kind of the rise of the Persona games and people sort of growing affinity for those and interest in kind of playing previous games, I think maybe that has kind of created a lot of interest in accessing some of these old SMT games.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's always exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I was not going to plug in a PS2 to go back and play this.
Right.
So it's cool that this exists on the Switch and on the PS4 for me to be able to access it now.
Yeah. That's been a nice side effect of just, Persona taking off and like all these weird Japanese franchises that kind of got left out of having Western releases for the longest time, like Fire Emblem.
Yakuza, very much Yakuza, right? I think that Like a Dragon is kind of the best-selling one now, and I think that every time they release a new one, it just continues to inspire sales of the older ones.
Yeah. I was going to say Yakuza is a weird case because we did get most of those. They were just like not as popular when they came out the first time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they did like the Kiwami remakes for the first few, which were very well received. But I was just thinking like with this one, I couldn't remember if it even came out in the US, and I think maybe the previous one did not. I don't know. Maybe it did. I'm not really familiar with the history of this series. But it's cool that they do get kind of a second shot at everybody getting a chance to play them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm not sure which of the early SMT games were available in the US. I believe 2.
I feel like, yeah, I think 2
didn't initially came out. Yeah, and I'm not sure where I read that, but yeah.
There might have been a couple different versions of it, if I remember correctly, and one of them didn't come out. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up that sounds correct in my head.
Yeah. This one, SMT3 Nocturne, did come out in the US initially. Google says February 20th, 2003.
Nice.
Yeah. And there's the old cover art. Fun. Which they sort of just updated for 2021. So it sounds like I'm a little down on this game, and yeah, it hasn't gripped me in the way that kind of the first few hours with like Persona 5 did, or even playing Shin Megami Tensei 4 on the 3DS a couple of years ago did. But, it's an interesting exploration of kind of the origins of some of the stuff that goes on in those other games. I suspect, obviously, in a 50-hour timeline, there is still a build-up. There's, like I said, the intro of you being trapped in the hospital was still a good 3 hours of you trying to get out of that. Yeah. So they have time to get me. But, in the short term, they've got to keep me. I have a bad habit of sort of getting frustrated or bored and just moving on to the next thing. So, I want to see this through. I would love to know how it ends. But it's just a little stuffy, a little sterile, a little, annoying in the first couple of hours.
Yeah, and it can be tough going back to playing games from this long ago. Although that's also something I like about the PS2 era specifically, just because it feels like when we got into the PS3 and Xbox, it felt like games became a lot more like, not standardized, I don't think is the right word, but just people kind of had different expectations about just how games should work. They started to feel a lot less experimental. Like if you're playing a PS2 game, who knew what was going to happen? Like maybe they had some good idea for how like the user interface would work or whatever, or just worked in a completely weird way that you would never see in a game these days. It just felt like there were a lot fewer rules about how to actually like construct a video game back then.
Sure. Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
So I just like, the opportunity to go back and experience some of that like PS2 weirdness or PS1 weirdness, which, in Saga Frontier's case may not necessarily be a good thing, but it's just, it's kind of exciting to see how weird and unregulated things were back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they didn't have a lot to draw from, right? And particularly,
yeah.
I don't know, if you're developing video games in Japan and they're going to hopefully, presumably someday be consumed by an audience in North America, that, those two worlds were much further apart than they are right now.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's just, culturally, it's a very sort of interesting exploration.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised this even came over. Like, I wasn't a huge follower of the series back then, obviously, but when did Persona 3 came out? Oh, that was after this, wasn't it?
I assume so. I don't have that in my brain. Let me see. Persona 3 release date. July 13th, 2006. So yeah, 3 years later.
Oh, like way after. Okay.
Yeah.
I still have to clear enough time to go back through all the Persona games. I don't know if I'll ever make it to the actual Shin Megami Tensei series.
Well, given the pace that you're getting through the Persona games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Geez, the first Persona was 1996.
I played a little of that one.
Did you?
Did not care for it. But still, like that got re-released as well, I think. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll, have a little Saga Frontier experience. Go back and replay Persona 1.
So I don't know if Atlas gets the credit they deserve for longevity. They have been kicking for a while.
Yeah. No, they've been doing a good job.
Cool. So I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to keep plugging away at it. I mean, clearly there is a lot more video game to explore here. I'm hoping it grips me at some point and I learn to just sort of grin and bear the annoying little parts of it.
Have you been Mothman yet?
Mothman? No, I don't believe so.
Oh, man. It's the only thing I know about this series, that Mothman shows up and he's very weird.
Yeah, I don't think so. I suspect I would remember that.
Oh, I think you'd remember Mothman. I hope you
okay. Is it sort of like the Mothman prophecies? Indrid Cole? Is he,
Oh, I don't know what the lore
come and
is.
foretell that the bridge is going to collapse and everybody's going to die?
I have no idea.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, he looks like a little cartoon moth in this, and there's like, I don't even know if this is real. Not come to think of it, but there's this image of him that goes around, and it's from one of the like demon negotiation segments, and it's Mothman, just this weird cartoon Mothman asking you questions, and he says, "What, or who is your favorite demon?" And then all three answers are Mothman. Oh. So I don't know. I would love to know what the deal is with that guy.
This tells me where I can find him. So
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna tuck that information into my hat and come back to it later.
Gotta get through the next 80 hours. You could shoot Mothman.
Also, I have to put on a hat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a hard recommendation. I think probably if you're listening to this, you know whether or not this appeals to you. Certainly there are, better, more easily navigated and experienced video games. Absolutely play Persona 4. I think that's probably the best way into this thing. But yeah, if you've been through all of those other ones and are curious about some of the origins of that craziness, this thing is here for you. Yeah. I suppose we should wrap it up, right? I think we've done our thing.
I think that was it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we did the Shin Megami Tensei 3 show.
We did.
HD
Stop
remaster.
Talking about it now. God.
Never again.
If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about the episode at VGHangover.com. We would love to have you join our Discord. You can get the link to that over at VGHangover.com as well. It's been a little quiet on the Discord lately. I think everybody's doing outdoor things, going to bars, and socializing with other human beings. It's very inspiring to see. We are certainly not at our pandemic level interaction on the Discord, but still good content, still good people to hang out with. If you definitely need some gamer friends, head over to VGHangover.com and get a link to the Discord. We'd love to hang out with you.
Everybody's deleted their Animal Crossing islands. They're just like, oh, don't need this anymore.
It's just me and Eshin keeping the Animal Crossing channel alive over there. Got to get those gold tools, man. We all want those gold shovels. I think that's the only thing that keeps us coming back at this point.
You don't want a gold shovel. It's just going to break in like 2 days.
No, like 3 days.
3 days. Okay, that's the advantage of having.
That's the advantage of the gold shovel. What else? Subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. That's what it's called. Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yes, please do that. Just tell all your friends who are looking for a new video game podcast to listen to. It really helps us get the word out.
Yeah.
And helps us bring you more video game hangover every week.
It does. There was a little thread on my sort of hometown Harrisburg, midtown Harrisburg little Facebook group where people just generally sort of like, hey, I found somebody's keys on Front Street. Stuff like that. Yeah. But somebody was like, hey, I'm going on a road trip. What podcast should I listen to? And I'm like, this is my moment. This is my time to shine. So I pitched VGH real hard. And she said, unfortunately, that she doesn't like video games.
Well, her loss.
Yeah, what a monster. She's a horrible person.
You don't tell her we just talk about cicadas all the time now. That's right. Very relevant.
It's really mostly about Taco Bell.
Yeah, well, that too. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want to give a special thanks again to our retro intro and outro music this week. Retro outro, whatever we're calling it. We heard Eric Circa on the way in. We're going to head out with some Disaster Piece, another one of my favorites. So thank you very much to those guys. Please head on over to VGHangover.com. You can get links to their band camps so you can listen to the rest of their stuff. Maybe buy a few albums.
Nice. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya. puberty's a bitch.